The Commonwealth from humble beginnings to a country on par to the NCR, but to help make it to this point they would need a little law and order.
The history of the Greater Boston Police Department.
It first started over the protests of 2,291 over constitutional violations and the breaking of laws by the militias who enforced the laws in the settlements at that time. This would lead to the Good Neighbor Revolt, and after this event there would be an increase in support of the creation of the police. These events would lead to a police force being created. However, at that time the government was dealing with heavy debt issues, so they were unable to fully pay for the department. Donations and under-the-table deals were the only things keeping the department running in those early days. They would be tasked with keeping order, maintaining the law, and serving their communities in the greater Boston area. The GBPD would need to acquire various amounts of equipment for them to do their job, so they contacted the Minutemen. They would organize a deal with the Minutemen. They were aware that in police armories there were R91s, but the police had rights over the R91s, and so they had to make a deal in order to get them. The Minutemen wanted to acquire the R91s as they wanted to replace their aging and inferior combat rifles and assault rifles. So in return for the Minutemen's old equipment the police would let the Minutemen have the R91s. The GBPD would accept. Also at this time higher-ranking police officials would use pre-war police hats to identify them. But the lower-ranking officers, due to supply issues, would just use old Minutemen hats. The GBPD would also acquire all pre-war stations except for the Quincy and Cambridge stations due to faction occupation. The GBPD would run into manpower issues, but either ways GBPD at this point would truly start their job maintaining laws and keeping order. But they would run into their second issue. Some militias were arguing and sometimes even fighting with the police over the police replacing the militias.
However, the GBPD did not have the manpower to deal with the militias being outnumbered. Although luckily enough for them, the M.M. was having disputes with the second company. They had become more effort than they were worth. Very dedicated to the new Commonwealth, upholding laws to a T within the borders of North Boston where they were stationed, and were pretty much already the police.
But they didn't agree with some of their superiors' orders, like leaving the Nicano family to die from a Mirelurk attack. So they would often disobey orders from command, irritating command, and this sometimes leading to court-martials, but they wouldn't stop.
It was seen more as a charitable donation from the Minutemen, with the second willingly to comply with this, since they would be with the actual police with more power to enforce the laws and their moral code. This would be perfect for the GBPD, solving their manpower issues and introducing people with military training and a strict moral code with adherence to the law mostly. With the second now in the fold, they would show overwhelming force against the defiant militias who didn't want to give over power and forced them to stop and peacefully hand over power. With the manpower and militia problems solved, they decided to make the commander of the second the police chief. However, following the Gunner War, the Quincy station would be reclaimed. The GBPD would only operate out of available pre-war police stations due to budgeting issues until 2293, when the Beantown Brewery massacre occurred.